Welcome to Real Kyper and Bourne. Today I am proud to be with former Leafs general manager, all-time great media guy here, Gord Stellick. Welcome, Gord. Great to have you, pal.
Well, I've been milking the GM thing, thank you, for many decades. So I'm glad I can milk it one more time.
It's not a small note on your resume.
It's no, it's true. It's true. Anyway, it's fun. Always great to be on. I'm always watching or listening, and I miss Sammy. Of course, we always did Leafs Nation for a while, so lots of action going on. So I'm ready to go.
I didn't even give you an and Sammy McKee the way Kip does, but it's just not natural.
Here's the thing. I feel so much more comfortable back over here.
In that scene,
I was sitting there. I was a different person over there.
I got bad news about the second hour of the show, pal. You're coming to hang with me.
Why?
What's that? Oh, we got the second hour too?
Yes,
all day. This is amazing. Gord for both hours.
God.
I thought we just had 1 hour of Gord.
You're not getting Gord all the way in here for 1 hour.
I'd be worried my pass card wouldn't work on the way out. I've had that before. Don't scare me.
That's awesome. We're on Sportsnet 590, Sportsnet 360, and Sportsnet Plus. You can find the podcast wherever you get your pods. And today, text us at 590. In the back half of the show, Gord, Sammy, and I are going to respond to those texts. And we'll actually get to those today. We're gonna dedicate a little bit of time to respond to as many of those as possible. So, last night the Leafs 6-2 victory over the Philadelphia Flyers. Outside of a few injuries, guys, not sure that there's too many negatives to take away from last night's game. One of their better showings in a while, I thought.
Yeah, I really thought it was. And it's funny. First, a question about, are the Flyers vulnerable right now? I'm not taking anything away from the Leaf win. And then, great team win. No Mitch Marner, and they still won. I know Kelly Yarncroke you mentioned from the injuries, but yeah, I just liked. We're trying to identify, is it a playoff style kind of game? And I thought last night was a playoff style kind of game. I thought it was hilarious about the 3 broken sticks. I've never seen that before. A 1 PK situation. And then the other thing about the code, about putting your best players on at the end. Sorry, is this House League? Did some of the parents call the Flyers and say these Toronto Maple Leafs? I mean, this is not the NHL.
Right.
So I don't care. You know what? Next week, if it pisses them off, it pisses them off. You shouldn't be losing like 6-2.
I know, Sam. Go ahead and do your zag here. Just so people know, last night at 5-1 or 6-1, the Leafs put out their top power play unit because it's professional hockey, and those guys would like their stats and to work on things and whatever. And the coach, he was very upset.
I think you were obviously eligible to put out your best players in a 6-1 National League hockey game for sure. Yeah. But if they're doing that to the Leafs and I'm a fan or I'm on the team or I'm Sheldon Keefe, they would be feeling the exact same way.
No, but cannot be a bigger crybaby thing in sports than this.
It's the NHL.
Of course, I understand that, but there's unwritten rules in sports. That's just one of them. There was no time.
This one should be abolished. There's a reason for this to be an unwritten rule.
And Sheldon shouldn't even had to try to explain. He actually kind of said, "Look, I just got my third and fourth line off." So and then they put their best penalty killers on. Yeah. And they scored a shorthanded goal. So wait a sec. Yeah. And anyway, that was kind of a weird note at the end about it. But I to the point, there were so many positives. Good team game. Coming together with depth, which is what you hope sustains them in the playoffs, because that's something they've lacked in other years.
Yeah, and also I will note that the Leafs scored a power play goal when all the sticks were dropped, and it was Liljegren to McCabe to Nyes. So, you guys were still giving up goals to those guys. So
Hold on. You guys can't see Rocky Thompson's perspective at all?
I got zero.
Zero.
No. I mean, 8-0, maybe. Like, it's not like it's... I still don't think it's silly, even 8-0. Just go play hockey.
I think... Yeah, okay. I just... The fact that Keefe immediately took off the top unit after getting screamed at, to me, was very telling.
No, and he put his top penalty killers on. That's what's bogus about it.
That he immediately was like, oh, crap, I probably shouldn't have done that. For me, was the point where I was like, yeah, okay. If he was leaving it out there to stick it to him, he would have left them out there a little longer, I think. But I don't know. I get why they're mad. And they're competitive. They're getting starched. It's not a great look. I understand your guys' perspective. But I think if you were both in that scenario, you would feel a similar way.
I think Sheldon's doing a solid for Bradshaw and Rocky Thompson, that he talked to them. These are the interim coaches, and a lot of people thought, like, boy, if John Tortorella was there, which I think is wrong because they won a game without him. But I think Keefe was almost being polite because these guys were the interim coaches, and the players, they pick up from the coach. Okay, when the coach chirps on that, the players pick up, and then when they're driving home, they're going, that was sucky.
Yeah.
That was sucky. That was lame.
The Leafs came back from 5 goals in one
Oh, you
period.
mean so that like they would have a clearer second thought driving home from their
100%.
ring? They probably would.
We've had a kick-ass season. We're in the playoffs. Nobody thought we'd be. I'm talking Philadelphia now.
Yeah.
And we've had it because we play a certain way that's admirable by the other 31 NHL teams by and large.
Yeah.
It doesn't include that.
Yeah, so we don't need to kick that around anymore, but it is a worthwhile
Well, it is a 2-hour show, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, am I mistaken again? Why am I only here for 5 minutes?
Why don't we start with Sheldon giving us an overview of the game, get his thoughts, and we'll dive in from there.
Well, we got a great goal first to start the game and get us going well. First couple of shifts weren't the best, to be honest, but that was a great goal that we got. A great sequence through there. Great pass by Austin and finish by Bert. So that's a great moment to get us going early and scoring early and playing ahead. And then I thought we played well. I thought we defended well. We did things that we wanted to do here today in terms of not allowing the big chance or the big. This team gets a lot off the rush, a lot of breakaways, 2-on-1s, and getting behind you a lot. I thought we managed that really well tonight, but it wasn't perfect. I mean, goaltending is a factor here. I mean, Sammy made great saves for us. We got someone that I'm sure that their goalie coach doesn't love on the other side. And then the second period, I thought they made the goalie switch. The guy came in, made some big saves, and then they scored, and it's a game there. But overall, I like how our guys stayed with it.
Fair enough.
Got some goals that their goalie coach wouldn't have loved.
Yeah,
That's a nice way to say it.
And that's a fair point, but I think the natural stat trick had the high danger chances at 19-2 for the Leafs.
Wow.
So
It showed. It did show.
Yeah.
We talked about it yesterday with Charlie O'Connor, that decor is just really hurting. They traded Sean Walker, clearly. Rasmus Ristolainen's out.
A lot
Jamie
of Igor
Drysdale
Zamula last night.
They're really hurting on the back end for sure. So it kind of showed. And it's, a huge testament for them to still be in the playoffs with that roster and just how hard they work. And that was a closer game than it looked until halfway through the third period when they kind of blew it open. But yeah, they're struggling a little bit.
Talking to Craig Berube, because he does an insider hit on our NHL Network radio show weekly. So talked about the Flyers about a month ago. Yeah. And being a coach, first thing you talked about, first of all, I said every other team is as prepared, work as well as any team in the NHL. But what do coaches say first? Bang, bang, goaltending. Mm-hmm. Goaltending. And it was a 1-2 punch. Of course, Carter Hart not there anymore. So they're riding this guy, 22 out of 23 games? Yeah. So that's
a lot of work.
So that's something, and that's taking nothing away from any of the other aspects that's gone right for Philadelphia. But that's a team that I'm kind of surprised how solid the goaltending's been. And that's a big reason they're in the playoffs right now.
For sure it is. And yeah, so a game like where they've relied on that all year, then last night Liljegren comes in, steps over the blue line, just like wrists one into the net from distance. You're like,
yeah.
Can I defend Arison a little bit on that one?
It knuckled.
It was a slider.
Yeah,
looked like
down
Dave
and away.
Steve, just right down to the outside corner of the plate, I thought. But
Dave
yeah, it's still
Steve,
not great.
I'm supposed to make those references. Dave Steve.
Well, I've seen
I
clips.
respect that. That's great. Okay.
Who would I go with more recent? Manoa's slider was pretty good there for a couple of years. But wasn't Dave Steve, that's for sure.
So at the other end of things, Sammy plays well again, the goalie, not the co-host over here. Is he... They gave him the start over Wool, and they had been alternating things. Is this some sort of indication that they're going, God, maybe he's the one that's going to play game one?
Yeah. I don't know if he will. But first, one is when I really give Samsonov a lot of credit, and I give the organization a lot of credit about being, my day would be get the hell out of here, play for whatever our farm team is, and that's it, where they said, no, it's not going to help him going to the AHL. So whatever they did behind the scenes and whatever he did, to get a reset, to me, I commend both of them. So you go into the playoffs, and are both Joe Wall and Samsonov ready? Well, that's a great situation. Vegas last year needed 2 goaltenders, and they weren't big names. Yeah. So they just need to have one of them being able to play playoff games that always give you a chance to win. And if they steal, that's a bonus. Because except for Joe Wall last year, they have not had that. And I love Freddie, but they've been out goaltended basically all the time in the playoffs.
Yeah, I didn't think there was anything last night that made me feel that different, but there's a point there last night where it gets to 3-1, I think, and there's a power play the Flyers have where a guy has an open look in front, and Samsonov gets a skate blade on one. Where all of a sudden, if it's 3-2, it totally changes the tone a little bit. We got Sheldon Keefe weighing in on his goalie here, so let's go to clip 3 and see what Sheldon had to say.
Yeah, as of late for this season, for sure. He's more like himself that we came to expect from last season, and it's been like that for quite some time. So that's a huge part of our group right now.
And there you go.
I can't believe this is the same guy. Like, I really, because he's gotten back to the point with me last year where one of my things that I would say on Leafs Talk a lot is that he just looks like a capable starting NHL goalie where you don't think about him a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Where at the start of the year, it's all you thought about.
He's a circus. He's Peter Mrazek in there.
Peter Mrazek was okay for a stretch this year, but no, he just had these moments where, every sort of shot going towards him, you were panicking. Like, it was all you thought about. In this stretch of, I don't know how many, since he's come back, there was a little bit of a dip there, but since then.
You go and do something like this. And totally redeem yourself.
I'm just kind of back to last year where I'm not really thinking about it and worrying about it a whole lot. Because that's the whole thing when you're when you're a coach, a general manager, a fan, a player on the team, the last thing you want to be doing is just thinking about your goalie a lot. Like, you just want him to kind of be solid and consistent. And he's gotten back to a place I never expected him to get to. I have to be honest.
You got to give Peter Mrazek credit. He saved a teammate for getting the crap kicked out of him the Chicago Anaheim game when he was third man in on that kind of fight.
Yeah.
And Gibson came down.
Yeah.
By the way, Matt Murray's been on the ice for a while too. They got it's not 3 in a crease, there's 4 in a crease.
Don't tell Gary Bettman that.
But
we don't have that talk here.
But the other side about it is now you're better at looking at the technical side. He doesn't seem as busy.
Right.
Yeah, that was always the thing about Samsonov. Like, just you just when you don't have you just look busy. Too much is going on.
A lot of work. He's out of the net. He's got to push back into the net.
Yeah,
and certainly a little bit calmer now. So, how much of that is the last 3 games they put him in against Arizona, Philly, and Montreal? Versus Joe Woll gets Boston.
Yeah,
but
Saturday night against Carolina, if you're going on merit, to me the starting goalie would be Samsonov again.
To me, it's like, how is that reasonably fair to Joe Woll, who you handed Boston to?
Well, I mean,
you haven't played.
Way to go getting wins against the bottom teams in the league.
You can't play every 10 days.
Yeah,
they've got one of their biggest schedule gaps going. I think they basically have a tandem going now, and they're comfortable getting in the playoffs, and you want to give both of them equal time in the net to both be prepared.
The only risk is, let's say you go back to Woll and he gets Carolina, who just beat the brakes off Florida.
Yeah.
And so now he loses again because Carolina's a great team, just like Boston is. And all of a sudden, this guy's on some sort of losing streak. Sammy wins every time he's in. And what does that do for the mental state of your starters?
That's a part of the reason why, if I was a coach, I might consider starting him. But I think it's pretty clear they'll go Wall on Saturday. Like, it's just the way they've been doing things. But I'm just, feels like Sammy's the starter again, and I never thought we'd get there.
Do you remember with Freddie? The whole concern was we got to give Freddie some rest.
Yeah.
Remember that was the whole concern all the time.
Oh, they played him like every night.
Well, yeah.
And then he never go in his prime.
And then he never had great playoffs as well. But here we're talking, I guess, riches of goaltenders trying to find enough crease time for them.
Yeah, riches is generous, but we'll take a couple of guys.
Quantity-wise.
Yeah.
In Freddie's, how many years here? 5 years. The first 4 years, he was 66, 66, 60, 52.
That's wild.
It's a lot of hockey.
They played him way too much.
Yep.
That's crazy. On the upside of things last night, so Mitch Marner's not in, which is not the upside part, but they put together a line with Matthews, Nylander, and Bertuzzi.
And Yarncroc. Well, they had Yarncroc, but Bertuzzi Nylander ended up being on the line when they scored the first one.
Right.
I don't know who stayed late, but somebody did.
But the point I want to make is more Bertuzzi-based, which is just, they kind of got a guy here, do they not? Like, does he not look totally different from the first half of the year?
Oh, and that's why trade deadline, I know Kippy wrote about it, and you guys have talked about it extensively, that, first of all, their rivals didn't do a lot in the Atlantic Division.
100%.
And your trade deadline pickups are Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi finding their way because they're hired guns, they're on expiring contracts, which is usually, that you have
guys
that
you
kind.
Bring in.
Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, there was that Boston game was a statement game. I don't know how many people said, I didn't like the loss, but I love the game. Because going back to when Marchand was, what the visual of them doing nothing when Liljegren was injured, and the new guys in town, aside from the fact they've been contributing before that, but, that word snot, Brian Burke used truculence, Brad Treliving used snot, Kyle Dubas used unnecessary, whatever, that they showed the snot, you know, like in that one, they initiate, even Jake McCabe a little bit. And so if you're going to play Boston in the playoffs or whomever, that part I like, because as we well know, there's an element of that, and it's not for Wayne Simmons or Kyle Clifford or Matt Martin or Fraser McLaren or Colton Orr. It's about someone that can be in your top 9 and provide that.
You know, Bert was the exact guy we talked about. So we had Anthony Petrilli on yesterday, and we talked about how Bertuzzi would be best if it were like 8-on-8 hockey. The more traffic, the more chaos, the better he is. And last night is a great example. The swinging foul ball tip that gets waved off is one of the best tips I've seen in NHL history.
Yeah.
I mean, the timing to be able to redirect it with force as it's coming across your body.
That's a legitimate top 2, top 3 goal of the year candidate if that stands. It was one of the more unbelievable things you've seen.
With the broken stick one.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that one was great.
Yeah.
But the thing that led to it getting overturned is just such a spot where you can't have any gray area. Right? There's just no gray. There's no gray area.
It's no goal.
But he got buried, and his hand is like, his dead hand like touches the puck a little bit. It wasn't, I think, a spirit of the rule thing, but it's gray area. You can't have it. But yeah, it sucked to see that come off the board.
But there's
an amazing
a good
goal.
Look after that of what Bertuzzi's good and bad at. He got in alone for a break, and he squared the puck off and dumped it in the corner.
I know.
And it was
Lost
like,
it.
God, he can't handle it with space, but get him in traffic. And yeah, one of his better games of the year last night. Why don't we hear Sheldon? We can go in more on that clip too, please.
Well, like, he's been a good player in the league, and probably the biggest thing is he had the number of chances that he had so close into the net or in around the net that just hadn't been going in for him. You know, he gets another one taken away here tonight. I think that's 3 that I can recall now that have been taken away from him this season. But he's around that net, and you know, it's good to see. It's an important piece for our team.
3 that he's had? I can't remember the 3.
Was he up to 13? Like, there's a sneaky chance he could get to. Could he get to 20? He needs 7 more in the last 17 games.
Feels like it's asking a lot.
Yeah, but you know, you're getting into that conversation where he is legitimate depth scoring.
And keep in mind, last year at the trade deadline, this was a big trade from Detroit to Boston.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy's 1 year away from, and because when the Bruins get eliminated in the first round, and that always changes the perception of the deal. He didn't go from, you know, that's still a hell of a, if this was a trade deadline move this year, to me, that's still a hell of a pickup, like they did last year in Boston about getting Tyler Bertuzzi. I mean, he's and to a different extent, Max Domi kind of, with 2 consecutive playoffs, you know, playoff experience, because he's been with teams that haven't been in the playoffs, Arizona and then Montreal,
Dallas year.
and Carolina, right? The last 2 years. So he's been a serviceable, I don't know, whatever the word, I mean, you know, kind of player. So they're kind of add-ons that have had, I don't know about Bertuzzi having positive playoff experience, maybe not that, but a touted guy, the kind of player you need, and Domi, that snot as well, but also a guy who was a plus, was a good depth guy with 2 different teams.
In the playoffs last year, in 19 games, he had 13 points and 52 penalty minutes in 19 games.
That's still a lot of PIMs.
That's a lot of PIMs in 19 games. But I think if there's one thing that really does give me some hope heading towards the playoffs with the inevitable series
Only
against...
one?
We're on a nice positive note here. They won. I don't want to get too down in the weeds with this, but it is that those 2 guys, Domi and Bertuzzi specifically, have really, as we've been getting closer to playoffs here, have started to kind of turn it on a bit and started to look like the best versions of themselves, and both of them being sold as playoff contributors for this team. And they're really going to start to look their best when it's playoff time. The fact that we're inching closer towards that and it's sort of starting to happen does give me a bit of hope, I have to say.
You know the big thing I like about this? I have no idea. I have no idea what it means heading in the playoffs. The year when it was the Canadian division, and they won those 3 games in Edmonton, 3 different goaltenders, almost got shutouts, but 1 goal was scored. That was, I would have bet, I'm not a betting guy, I would have bet whatever on it. So I really, I don't know, the mystery of what constitutes the right way, the best way to get you better prepared for the playoffs, or does it predicated on playoff experiences like last year? You won a series, so maybe that's the positive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I've been everything going on. It's not just Toronto; it's a lot of other teams. About what is the best way to enhance your chance of playoff success in how you play the regular season and finish the regular season.
Well, we had Ralphie earlier this week, and he was saying that he loves them as an underdog. Like, he loves them in a series going into Boston as an underdog. He thinks that anytime there's the expectations on this core or that they should beat somebody, that's when it goes the other way. And I think
it hasn't gone either way.
Well, no, I mean, listen, they've done a lot of losing for sure.
Yeah,
but they've
got a
also,
lot of losses.
But they've also been the favorite in a lot of these series, right? Like, looking back, going against
Recently, for sure.
Well, Columbus, I don't know if they were actually a betting favorite, but they were perceived.
Favorite.
They're
Montreal's favorite.
They're
Yeah.
perceived as favorites against Columbus, Montreal. I think the first Tampa series, both Tampa series, I think they were favorites.
Well, no, one was in Tampa, so you got to give them it. And you could say last year maybe they were the favorite.
Didn't they both start in Toronto? They did both start in Toronto.
Oh, Game 7 here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, well, Washington, they weren't.
Yeah.
I want to say the second Boston series, there might have been 2. It might be 5 straight years where you'd say at least break even or favorite, somewhere in that realm. So that's the hope, is that maybe the underdog status return will help them out. Gord, to your question about like what's the best way to go about it, one thing recently, so it's been broken, but when teams in the playoffs have gone 7 games and then won, and then gone up against a team who swept their series, the team that went 7 games won the next series like 7 straight times.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more time.
So team goes 7 games, knockdown, drag-out series, and they win, and then they play a team coming off a sweep. The team that had been through the war won those series like 7 straight times until I think recently the streak was broken last year. But, so the teams that get in and fight and play competitive hockey right up to the end, there is some advantage to having to play playoff-style must-win hockey, and rather the Leafs have coasted in a lot of years now.
The team that swept, it then is off like the equivalent of that long break when
like
the team
13 days sometimes.
Remember they put all the breaks together now because they're close, because when it was so obvious that they staggered them, but you've been off 5 days. You got your butt kicked. It was a terrible hockey game, and that's almost so. The funny one thing people say is you can't play 4 7-game series. You got to have a series that only lasts 5, and maybe that is the case. But the other part is there's extra days off and things like that, But you're right about the winning. Well, how about teams that like the Memorial Cup, if they're off for a while, and then they the home team, the host team. And then they have to play 30 days later.
Yeah,
to come back and
they're
play.
sitting at home, and then a red hot team wins one of the leagues comes in. It's tough for them.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was thinking last night watching Bertuzzi. A lot of earlier in this season, we did a lot of God. You're paying him 5-5 and 5-5, and the number kept coming up. What you were paying him. All of a sudden, you step back from his season right now and how he's playing right now, and if he were a UFA, what he would get, and kind of start to feel like he's worth the money again, and would probably get a similar contract, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely, and. Now maybe they wish they had term, but I like the fact that they didn't. It sort of put them, both of them have to establish things, and early on you kind of thought, oh man, are they going to just be a step ahead of John Klingberg?
Yeah.
About not making any, not putting on any good show and not helping their marketing value. But yeah, it's just nice to see it. Like I've compared it about sometimes we've all had things about somewhere new, a school, a workplace. And you don't get off on the right foot. Mm-hmm. And quite often you never get rolling. You're David Clarkson. You're Nick Ritchie.
Well said.
You're not Michael Bunting. And I was worried that might have been the case for those guys. And that's really the that's what I'll go along with Sam about. I will say that is an encouraging part heading into the playoffs.
Him finding a little bit. I would do
run.
4 times his current contract right now.
Who?
Bertuzzi. Yeah? It's a little much.
4 times 5.
4 times 5.
But you're not going to get him for cheaper.
4 times 4, 5. Yeah.
So what would you give?
I don't know if I'd
Sam,
give him, I don't know
Sammy
if I'd
doesn't
give him
keep the cap in mind when he gets crazy.
I don't think
he was going to give Jack
12 by
Campbell.
1.
He was going to give Jack Campbell Connor McDavid money.
I actually
at one point.
yeah,
8 times 12.5.
I compared him to Cujo.
At one point.
I don't think I would give him any contract.
No?
I know. Like, I think he's gotten better and he's continuing to improve here, but like there's a lot of year where it wasn't going. I don't know. I don't know if he's the perfect fit.
Wait and see what he does in playoffs.
Absolutely.
So
then pay him way too much.
I think an underlying story right now that's important is the injuries. Mitch Marner, the report was high ankle sprain for Marner. He has previously had one, but high ankle sprains are not quick or fun to deal with and aren't often like it's better now 100%. So how concerned are we on the Mitch Marner thing?
Well, I mean, the injuries for all the teams, right? And the Leafs have been, haven't had Dougie Hamilton or Mark Stone or, those kind of injuries that other teams have had, Gabriel Landeskog and what have you. So, I mean, it's a weird thing. And actually, I guess their record the record is great when Riley's out of the lineup. The record is great when Matthews is out of the lineup, which is weird logic.
And Tavares, too. It's good.
And Tavares. But Mitch is actually the one that...
Mitch has been the small sample size. He's only missed 25 games in his career or something.
But obviously, you miss him big time.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the kind of thing, those are the kind of players that could be out in the playoffs. And the team that wins it all wins in spite of the injuries.
Yeah.
And that's what Leafs are supposed to be.
We have a clip here about the update just for the sound of how serious it is if you want to play it. Clip 8 there, Derek.
Has he skated? Like, was he on the ice at all?
Yeah, he skated. He skated today. He skated yesterday. Yeah.
Is he still? You said no update. Is he still kind of in that day-to-day sense?
No, I would say it's more than that at this point. He won't skate tomorrow. Then we have a day off. It's a couple of days for him to settle, and sort of start to ramp it back up for next week.
There you go.
Okay, so he's not going to play this Saturday,
more than
but
day to day.
Could be next Saturday, that sort of thing. We're looking at 2.5 weeks maybe total.
Yeah. You need him.
Well, geez.
It's a really hot take, but you need him.
Yeah.
You need him at full strength.
But you know what I will say? This is one of those things where if you're buying into the Leafs season playing out fortuitously, we have said in the past, these guys play too much. Freddie Anderson playing 66 games. Mitch Marner's the guy that Kip's always saying, this guy can't play 27 minutes a night in game 57, then expect him to produce in playoffs. Maybe 2.5 weeks off in late March or, mid-March. Not the worst thing for the guy.
Maybe it could have happened 2 weeks before the deadline.
I don't
put him on LTIR.
I don't know about the injury thing, but I know, and you're not referencing that either. But I gotta believe, to your point, I mean, it's a science now. Like I want to have that job to tell you how much to sleep.
I know.
What a great job.
Hey, a lot. Sleep a lot. It's great.
Shout out Rich
But
Ruttenberg. He does
about,
that for the Leafs.
they don't practice. They don't practice long. And the thing about players missing games is it's kind of they're in that mode anyway. And they're young. Like Mitch wanting to play. But I accept from Kippy that being a factor, and also in the playoffs again, you don't want him playing 27 minutes. Like you want 4 lines going, or at least 3 lines going, because that's what's happened far too often. They've had to throw those guys out there every second shift.
Well, and today, so they rolled out some new look lines. Marner's out and Yarncroc is out. Yarncroc is a hand thing. He just came off a hand thing. I got no further.
Was it a hand thing?
Yeah.
You think?
Hand.
I thought it was a whole body thing.
I thought it was, but yeah, there was a report that it was his hand. So,
great.
We'll see. He's going to be out for a little bit. It looks like once again. God, it was nice for him to be back too. But the lines are very interesting. Holmberg on a top line with Matthews and Bertuzzi. Old Pontus getting some shine. And then they kind of made 3 lines. Nyes, Tavares, Robertson back in. McMahon, Domi, Nylander as a third line, which is interesting. Reeves out with Dewar, Gregor, and Kampf as a fourth line. Pontus, can you see it? Do you mind him getting that extra shine, getting some Matthews time?
Well, I mean, see, Bobby McMahon, another one, finding guys that can play. And, I always remember a guy named Mason Raymond. He was only here 1 year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a very good team. But
player.
he got a good contract out of it from Calgary because whatever it was, that year he was able to play on every line. Yeah. Again, not a very good team. But that's what you want to try to get, where there's those guys about that you say, okay, especially when the playoffs, what are the horses I have? Where am I going to go? Because every year when the disappointments happen, you're looking at making adjustments, along the way. So I don't mind it at all. I think the fact that they went on this tear lately, finally got some comfort space. They weren't comfortable all year to that to that Morgan Riley out winning streak. That this is exactly what you want to try.
Yeah, they do have some breathing room now.
Holmberg made a great pass on Matthews' goal last night.
He did.
Where Labushkin, again, just gets buried. He gets hit a lot.
Yeah.
And we pass it up to Holmberg, and Holmberg made a great pass, and he shot his 55th in the net there. But, yeah, I think Holmberg's the type of guy that they all talk about. They're all like, oh, he's the most skilled guy. They all love him. They all seem to have this, like,
are they joking? Are they being facetious?
I don't know, but they all, like, Mitch Marner got asked who's his favorite player, and he said it's Holmberg.
Yeah, but I do that about my buddy who's the worst, I'm like, oh, yeah, he's the best.
I mean, he's in the NHL. Yeah, it's not like he stinks.
I know.
And he had 2 points last night. He scored one of their goals. Like, I think he's a guy that they like to be able to move up and down, so...
why don't we listen to Sheldon talking about the lineup to play Carolina as the team they have tomorrow night, so it should be a good battle there.
You look at our lineup in practice that we had today, that's sort of my response to it, just in terms of getting more versatility in. You got speed and skill, Robertson and Gregor, and Gregor on the penalty kill, Robertson on the power play, so you're just trying to have a more versatile lineup, in particular with the opponent that we have tomorrow night. That's going to be 4 lines deep, and Scoring spread out over 4 lines as much or more so than anybody in the league. So it's a night where, you're going to need 4 lines.
There you go.
I did a quick search here while he was talking because I was thinking Lyubushkin does get hit a lot. I wonder who gets hit the most in the league. And at 5-on-5, the leader is Jake McCabe.
Oh,
Gets
wow.
hit more than anyone else in the NHL.
Really?
Yeah, he's been hit. I'm going to do all strengths here, so I'll do a quick toggle. But yeah, he's been hit 149 times this year.
So, okay.
McCabe has been?
Yeah,
That's a lot of
so
times.
TJ Brodie 8th.
So the positive or negative side of that stat. So one is the guy is unafraid he takes a hit.
Yeah, he makes
The
you.
other is I view the positive versus others that say maybe they can catch up to him too much. He should be
That's
more
right. You're
elusive.
not
I don't
pulling
know.
away.
It's hard you interpret those things.
Yeah, well, that's a good
Where's
question.
is Lyubushkin anywhere near there?
Nowhere that I saw easily in the top. But Brodie was 8th and Liljegren is 9th. No, he's 12th. So, yeah, there's some Leafs that are going back and getting hit quite a bit, which to me actually says something about running more interference for your partner, when
or the
dump-ins
forwards.
happen.
Well, the expression
forwards slowing him
taking a
down.
hit.
Yeah.
The guy's afraid to take a hit, right? So, I mean, that's a positive. Obviously, unless they were afraid to get, they still got hit anyway. That's not good. So, with 3 in the top 12.
Yeah, of guys getting hit a lot.
Wow.
Something to consider.
All right.
We'll go to break. We're going to get to Mike Futa after the break here. He's going to talk a little hockey. We got some questions for him, and then we'll have Doug MacLean.
With no Kyper.
With no Kyper. I don't even know what to expect there. Doug and I have never talked without Kip. I'm a little terrified. But anyway, Futs is coming up next after this. Welcome back to Real Kyper and Bourne. We are now joined by 2-time Stanley Cup winning executive Mike Futa, friend of the show. How you doing, Futs?
I'm doing awesome, Borny. You guys are doing a wonderful job with the data way.
Yeah, thanks. I do feel like, we're going to have to clean up the studio when he comes back or something, like my parents been away or something. But, it's been going good. Just talking a little bit about the Leafs last night. We're happy to get you on the Leafs Hour so we can actually ask you questions about them. I don't know that we've got you on since the deadline, and just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the way they went about it, adding Lyubushkin, Edmondson, Dewar. Was that enough for you? Are you happy with the way they handled their deadline?
Well, I think Brad did what he did with the assets that he had. I don't think he had much to move. And I think in that case, he went out of his way to, I think ideally he would have liked, Lyubushkin's a righty. I think ideally, if Edmondson shot right, he would have hit it out of the park. But, when you don't have the assets and you've got other people bidding and you don't have the cap space, I think he did an admirable job. He's gone out of his way looking at who his first round opponent is to get the team harder to play against. And I think with the additions of Edmondson and Lyubushkin, he accomplished that. I still think it's a work in progress. When we're going to see Carolina come in last night. And I just don't see we're seeing that camaraderie yet where the pairs just have that synergy where you're completely comfortable, but it's definitely still a work in progress.
So up front, we talk about the additions more last summer, and I'm curious about Max Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi finding their way, Mike, and what's you see that potentially being a difference maker in the playoffs for a team that has had bad playoff finishes for too many years.
Well, I listened to you guys start off, and I couldn't agree more that they're playing their best hockey now. And I love the fact it doesn't look like Toronto's going to get to Max like he's used to it. And I think even last night, the confidence that that Bertuzzi's playing with. If that goal had been called back a month ago, I think he might have had to finding ways to laugh about missed chances now because he seems to have his confidence. But again, it's going to come down to what they do in the playoffs. And I know Borny asked me the other night when I asked about coming on, he said to watch the Philly-Toronto game. And I found myself last night like a kid kind of cheating and looking over at the test on another channel and watching the Florida-Carolina game after the Flyers kind of got wiped early. And I think it's going to be a real big test on Saturday night. Obviously, it sounds like based on what you guys said that Mitch is going to be out of the lineup. But this Carolina Hurricanes team right now, and they've been playing some big boys too. They've been kind of going a little going back and forth with playing the Rangers and playing Florida, and their depth and with what they've added. I think it's going to be a real big test for that Leaf defense because again, I still don't like. I thought last night. I think I think that Brody took a penalty because he was forced to defend playing as offside, and he had to kind of dive to the middle when the guy beat him to the inside, which is a tough thing for anybody to do. But I think that Saturday night game is going to be one heck of a test for the Leafs, playing a team that is kind of hitting all cylinders with depth up front and a defense core that's 6 deep. And we'll see who they play in that, because Freddie never seems to play very well against the Leafs, but the Kotkachev's been very, very, very solid.
Yeah, maybe you can help us tee up that game, that Carolina Hurricanes team. Do you feel like they're better than they've been in years past? Like, they've had some fairly deep runs, and there's been a little bit of turnover there. Obviously, nice addition with Gensel. Kuznetsov scores the other night. Did you feel like this is their best chance at a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, health aside, and I mean, I'm not backing away from your question, because I was a part of the organization a couple of years ago, and I talked at length. I sat in that war room, and at the time there was a no rental rule, and there was only certain prospects that they were willing to part with. And at the deadline, I mean, Max was added late, but there was a chance to add Giordano and Delorier, which were players that Roddy coveted, and they didn't want to move on from any of their prospects. And I give Tom Dundon and his staff full credit this year, because needing someone that can be a game breaker with his puck in the stick in the playoffs, you couldn't have asked for a better guy proven than Gensel. And Kuznetsov is not too far in the past, showed he can do it too. And it's easy to cheer for him with the problems he's had. So as far as depth and that blue line, I mean, you talk about when we try and put pairs together, you got like Slavin, Burns, Pesce, Orlov, Shea, and Chadwick. And then you've got DeAngelis as a healthy scratch. That's deep. That is deep. And they match up. There's a lot of righties there, lefties. So I think it's going to be, again, because the skill that the Leafs have up front is going to challenge them, but it would be a real I think it's just going to be a good test for both teams, and particularly Toronto, because you see that I just didn't think, I know we're giving him credit for last night, and I kind of disagree with Sammy. I thought Ersson was absolutely terrible early in a game that and I very seldom disagree with Sammy, but when Draisaitl and Rustalainen are out of the lineup, you need a much better effort when you're fighting for a playoff. And if that was a slider, then he should have dropped down and done his best Buck Martinez and blocked the ball. That was a terrible, terrible goal.
Yeah, I thought Sammy had a terrible start too, as far as the first segment goes. So maybe that's why he was sensitive. Carolina last year, they lost every playoff game by 1 goal, right? They just could not get that 1 goal. And Mike, in a lot of ways, although to me, Carolina is a stronger team this year, no question, compared to Toronto. But they're both looking for that guy to be in the running for the Conn Smythe Trophy, right? That guy in the playoffs, that's Nathan McKinnon for Colorado, that, is one of the Tampa Bay guys. I mean, it's kind of that way. They've got elite players, both teams, and if one or two of them do in the playoffs, it could be a fun run because they have it in the past.
I think you nailed it, Gord, but I think there's some. When we won our cups with the Los Angeles Kings, if you kind of internally voted on probably, and I'm not taking anything away, because Quickie was phenomenal and Justin Williams was phenomenal, but there probably wasn't a lot of votes for Anze Kopitar, and that's because he was the most accountable guy every night, 200 feet. And I think that guys like Sebastian Aho play such an accountable game under Roddy Brind'Amour that their numbers aren't such that they're acknowledged for being that kind of guy. But I think a player with the talent of a Svechnikov, if he gets hot, an Aho, I could definitely see. I don't see a goaltender for the Hurricanes being a guy that's named, but I do think if a Gensel gets hot, they might have a few guys that are candidates instead of one guy that kind of takes the ball and run for it, which you see with some of the star teams. But again, I think it's going to be an exceptionally interesting series, and I think so much matters when you look at. And I read Borny stuff about the playoffs, and it's so. I mean, I looked at the Western Conference matchups that they started today. There are 8 teams. Like, pick your poison in the first round where it stands. Where I think in the East, it's really critical in that conference for somebody, the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes, battling for that top spot. And I think again, Florida and Boston, that battle that's going on because. You got the Leafs sitting there with everything to prove. They may not be the favorites in whatever the pundits' mind are betting, but in everybody in Toronto's mind, they're the favorite because of what they need to accomplish to save face for the last success over the last few years.
Futes, when you guys won your cups, if I'm not mistaken, I think you had Clifford, Jordan Nolan, like you guys had some, muscle on the fourth line. Do you think Ryan Reeves needs to be in the Leafs lineup come playoffs? Can he be an effective version of what you guys had?
It depends who they match up against.
Yeah.
I mean, last night I actually sent a text to Mike Johnson because I was surprised that the way the Flyers have kind of been built this year, that Nick Delorier wasn't in the lineup and he was healthy. Like I guess he and Revo were having the conversations that everybody has nowadays in the warm-up, and then he was healthy scratch. So it depends who your playoff opponent. Like, I know they can't drive Carolina in the first round, but based on what I heard Sheldon, I can't believe more. It's not a series that Ryan Reeves is going to be necessary in. I mean, they're not going to draw Brandon Lemieux in the lineup to take care of Ryan Reeves. And that's no knock on Ryan Reeves, because I think he's playing much better hockey. Whereas if they play the New York Rangers somewhere down the line, I don't think Boston, if they have to throw it in the mud, I don't think they necessarily have a guy that matches up, that Reeves has got to be there and to keep them honest. I think he'd be more effective against a team like that. The Rangers, I mean, I don't know. Is their kid going to be out of jail by then? I'm sure he is. It's all about the matchup. But Carolina, it's just not. They've always consciously thought, and that's why I was pushing for Nick Delorier when I was there, that's not a player that they felt they needed. And Brandon Lemieux kind of is there for them now, and he fills in when they feel that they need to address some toughness on the other side, but I don't think that's going to be a factor in the playoffs.
Yeah, something you probably heard us talking about earlier as well, Mike. And again, we referenced your 2 Stanley Cups. I know one of them, I guess the Kings just got in at the end and just went on a tear about like, how do you gauge a regular season, whether it's Carolina, Toronto, whomever, to get you best prepared for playoff success? I mean, is there anything you found over the years?
Well, we went about it 2 completely different ways. And I will tell you, in 2012, we had to play every game like it was an absolute street fight just to get in. And Vancouver had an asterisk for about 6 weeks. They knew they were the first seed. And we came in and we were ready for a street fight, and we just kicked the living crap out of them in Vancouver physically in every facet. And they weren't ready to have a turf war, and they never rebounded. We were up 3-0 in the series. I mean, and we were up 3-0 in every series in 2012. And we weren't kicking the tar out of everybody. There was a lot of overtime, 1-goal wins, but you're still up 3-0. You're never facing defeat at one time, which is an incredible way to do it. And I think it was a lot to do with Daryl Sutter, but consistency. I laugh. We played the same 6 defensemen from the trade deadline, Christmas on, all the way through to the day we hoisted the Stanley Cup. We played the same 6, which is unheard of with injuries and stuff like that. But I mean, our guys were war torn, and then the 2014 was the exact opposite. We won 3 Game 7s on the road in the first 3 series to find a different way to win. So that one was a little harder on the nails than the heart. But then again, when the final result's there, and that's why so many teams, I look at some of these teams that have made really strong moves to get themselves a chance at that banner. And when you look at the matchup, some of them could be, like you talk about Vegas, who's got to get in now. But if you get Vegas and Edmonton, there's a lot of currency that was spent that could result in a first-round exit. So it should be very, very fun to watch.
It's funny, because you look at these teams. You talked about you guys fighting tooth and nail to get into that postseason. Tampa, the year they won the President's Trophy, got mopped by Columbus, right? And then last year, Boston, all-time points record, they lose to Florida. It's like you almost have to have some adversity along the way in these seasons.
Well, usually what I'd say to that point, I agree with you 100%, is we went a few rounds and kind of got busted up before we went the distance. We learned our lesson. And that's the only thing I'd say about the Toronto team. And it is nothing, because I love Brad Treliving, and I'm of the point that, I mean, there's people there. I'd love to see Mark Giordano win another Stanley Cup, but I don't think the league wants this team out. I think they'd love to see this team go deep, but they haven't had that adversity where they've had a long playoff run and failed. They've failed early every time. So it is going to be different. I don't think it's a thing that I think they're capable of going on that run and going the distance their first time, but it is unusual for a team to have all their adversity in a first run before they make an unsuccessful long playoff run.
Boy, I know a TV network, a radio network that would love a long run for the Toronto Maple Leafs, that's for sure,
okay,
as far as it goes. Now, Rod Brind'Amour, so contract's up, is that correct? And, Tom Dundon pays a little different, okay?
Really, Gord?
So, and last time, it kind of had to be massaged for him to stay there. And I'm just curious, what's your gut feel right now?
Well, I think if Carolina has success, regardless if they had success, I've never met a human being like Rod Brind'Amour. Like, he's an absolute machine. Like, I thought, and I mean, it's funny because I was going to make I don't want to get off track, but this guy was in the gym 6 o'clock every morning. I mean, the guy's got muscles in his face. His work ethic is so off the charts. Like, I used to think that, and I used to be told, like, I felt I was a pretty good orator, but you can't give your best Vince Lombardi or the guys will tune you out. This guy does it every night. He goes in there before every game, and after a game, he addresses them very well. And it's not X's and O's. It's about getting them going. And you can just feel his energy and his passion. And yes, he took a very huge pay cut to be the coach and even to return and resign. And it'll be an interesting thing because I know last time he took less of his less to keep some of his assistant coaches on. I believe the Leafs assistant moved on from Carolina because they didn't have the money to pay him. So hopefully if there's some kind of success in the playoffs or regardless, that he stays a Carolina Hurricane forever because he's such a part of their fabric. Same Justin Williams there. And he's such an incredible coach. I mean, I'd love to see him get the nod as the Olympic coach as well because of the passion that he has, but it's absolutely incredible. And I have to make one comment really quick because you would love this, Gord. This is me as a coach. Because I heard you guys talk about this event on the bench last night where the coach, to have the choice to put your top power play out when you're waxing a team. And as a coach with Mark Osborne for the expansion St. Mike's Majors, I was always the coach looking at the other team going, hey, do you really have to put those guys out there? And then I usually have Larry Mavety or Brian Kilray go, that is our third unit. You guys are just that bad.
That's a tough spot. Well, Futs, we appreciate your time and your insights as always, man. We'll get you back on soon. Thanks so much.
Pleasure, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too. Mike Futa, all his wonderful coaching and managerial insights. The main takeaway there, Sammy, for you is maybe there's sometimes you get frustrated if you're the expansion team.
Yeah. I think, I told a story about this last night on Leafs Talk, but when I was a kid and watching the London Knights come to Owen Sound and them leaving the top power play unit on when they're up 12-4 and Corey Perry's still coming out over the boards. I wasn't too thrilled about that. So maybe you had some deep-seated stuff from that. But listen. It is what it is. I think we spent too much time on it already.
Well, no, and part of it, he would be saying the context of being venting as an expansion coach, right? Yeah. So you got the worst team by virtue because you're an expansion team at that time.
If you're looking at Philly, you're not an expansion team. You should be able to handle it. Love the quick look at Carolina. Like, what a team top to bottom, just in terms of depth with Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen, Kotkaniemi's on their fourth line. Jordan Martinook is a great player in the third line with Seth Jarvis, who I know is a soft spot here, but, do you see this team as an East fave?
Oh, I picked them to win the Stanley Cup.
Did you?
And the most underrated general manager is Don Waddell.
Yeah.
And Don was brought in, he had a history of the Karmanos family, so he was brought in to facilitate the sale. And in doing that, Tom Dundon, who he's a hands-on owner. Mm-hmm. Whatever it was, they developed a good relationship, and he asked Don to stay on. And Don that wasn't in his plans. And one reason Ron Francis left is because the owner calls you a lot.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And apparently he doesn't mind as long as you call him back. Yeah. But whatever, but he calls you a lot. And it's not for everybody. And Don has developed a great way to deal with the owner has got a lot of positives, too. It's been a lot of what he's brought there. And then also just an underrated hockey guy. He was in a bad spot in Atlanta. He's been an assistant GM in a lot of spots out there. And just very quietly, even at the trade deadline a few years ago, Brady Shea for a first-round pick from the Rangers. Yeah. Little things that way. And getting guys to understand, in some cases, making Carolina a destination franchise now.
Sure.
That's huge.
Yes.
That's huge. Tulsky, the analytics side of it, too.
They have done things differently. Like, Tulsky is an analytics guy, is an assistant GM. He hired Ellen Etchingham, who I once hired as a freelance writer, as a scout. They will try to do things differently and explore all options. So, a big thanks to Mike Futa for his time. When we come back after this break, we will still have Gord Stellick.
Yes.
And we will talk with Doug MacLean. Looking forward to it after this. Welcome back to Real Kyper and Bourne. I am Justin Bourne. I am joined for the second hour by Gord Stellick today. Gord, thanks again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. When I was going to stay 1 hour, but then I heard it's off the rails with Doug MacLean. So I clamored and I begged and I lobbied to please let me stay a second hour.
I know. I'm so excited to get to it.
thank you.
I do have to throw really quick live on Sportsnet and Sportsnet 650 in Vancouver and Sportsnet 960 in Calgary. This hour of Real Kyper Bourne brought to you by Bet365. And now we get to be joined by Doug MacLean without Nick Kypreos. Dougie Mac, how are you feeling about being on a show without Kip?
Well, it's an honor, and it's not very often I get to be on with a former fellow GM, and it's kind of a treat. And so it's funny. I mentioned to somebody today that I was going to be on with Gord Stellick, and which is always fun because we've always had a lot of laughs over the years. But this guy was very serious about this question, and I think he's wrong, but he wanted to know if you were the GM of the Leafs when the Andy Bathgate deal was done for Don McKinney and Andy Bathgate to come from the Rangers in '63, were you part of that Stanley Cup acquisition?
I had played a small role in it. Of course, it was, Andy Bathgate, everyone, Dick Duff and Bob Nevin going the other way. And,
right.
that was, of course, as you know, a Punch Imlach trade. And whatever
Right.
from way back when. And I was, it's in the book 67, though. I'll still talk about the book Revival, which Damian Cox
Right.
I did about the 78 team. Of course, your book just kicked ass draft day, but it's in the 67 book about, you can find out if you're tired of reading Doug's book.
Okay. Anyway, I told Jeff Rimmer he was wrong on this, but he was convinced he was right on the timing. So,
Well, I look really good if I'm Punch Imlach's assistant back in 1964. I feel pretty happy how I look right now.
I can't believe we just had draft day show up on screen. I actually have it crossed out in Doug's bio of all the great things Doug did. We're tired of talking about the book.
You never stop talking about a book.
Right?
You know that, Justin. Doug knows that. I know that.
Bunch of authors here.
But I got another beef, by the way. So when I was working radio in Toronto, I had the Burlington Mercedes deal. Remember that one, Gord?
Yep.
I saw your reaction when Kip just read a commercial, by the way.
I'm thinking, are you kidding me? So anyway, they made me, because I had the deal done by myself. It wasn't through Sportsnet or anybody. So every time I had a chance on Hockey Central Noon, I'd say, "Oh, I love my new Mercedes. I love it. out in Burlington, they do a great job." So finally, they told me to shut up and stop mentioning it, or they're going to fire me. So anyway, Kippy pounces on the deal.
Yeah.
Evolving.
Yeah, and you can assume that deal is also a separate deal that does not include co-hosts. I promise. That is.
Oh yeah. There's only one thing about Kippy. It's always about Kippy.
No, but you work with the champion, McCowan, about throwing little products in. I mean, this car deal, obviously they pay the station, right? So that's the big thing. But to work 6 or 7 products, you've worked with some masters in.
Oh, no, it was priceless. But anyway, it was good to see Kippy. I'm glad Kippy's got a new Mercedes to drive around, and that's great. I mean, I'm out of those. Now that I'm retired and out of the mix, I've got no freebies coming here.
Sounds like you're doing okay, Doug. We're not too concerned about you.
Oh my God, I had an intense pickleball game this morning. It was intense. And
Did you win?
I played this week with the pros. I got moved up a category, so I played with the pros, and then I played this morning with my 80-year-old buddy here at the condo, and I kicked his ass. It was I was too hard on him.
This is like leaving your top power play unit out against when you're up 6-1. You just lay the beat down and no mercy.
That's like Keefe using Bertuzzi in these key situations. He's become a monster for them. It's amazing what Matthews can do for Bertuzzi. It's great to see. They may want to leave them together and get Mitch to maybe drag up some other people when he comes back.
You suggested to Kip. I'm not going to.
Now, I did run into Chris in the alumni box, Chris Broadhurst, the ex-therapist, and he did say pickleball injuries like everybody's on the rise. So the popularity, that's what he's treating nowadays. Now, hey, so what have you thought about? We're trying to get this. What is the best way to best prepare you for the playoffs as far as how you finish the regular season, as far as your regular season goes? The Maple Leafs have had every conceivable type, and every year it's been a playoff disappointment.
Let's make sure you do not have a bobblehead night. Make sure of that. You do not want to do that. Look, I like the way the Leafs are playing right now. I mean, Samsonov has come back and has looked good. Wall, we hope, is going to be really solid like he was before the injury and seems to be fine. Can Edmonton stay healthy? Can the group on the back end stay at least healthy, for the playoffs? And I think that's, like, you heard the players talking prior or after last night's game, is rest. Make sure you're 100% rested. And, you've got to move the pressure around. They've been under extreme pressure the last few years, guys, going into the first round, from everybody, from us, from every media in Canada. So to go in, I think they're going to go in loose this year. I think going against Boston is a good matchup for them. I think if they go in loose and healthy, it's going to be a heck of a series.
So at the deadline, GMs are making all these decisions, and there's a lot of scrutiny in Canada and trying to add pieces to a team that's not built. I want to take you in a little bit of a different direction. Doug Armstrong was just named GM for Team Canada. Wanted to get your thoughts on him being the guy and just what's different about that selection process and how you build out a staff from there.
That's an interesting one. It's whether it's the Olympics, whether it's the Four Nations, it's pretty interesting process to go through. I'm sure I never experienced it, but I'll tell you what, Doug has been there with Yzerman and as in the assistant's role. So that's a big advantage. You tick people off. I mean, let's not forget Yzerman in the St. Louis debacle, when they were together in Tampa and the pressure that put on both sides. But it's an exciting thing for Doug to get a chance. He's the most experienced GM and the longest serving GM in the league, one of the most experienced. He deserves a chance at it. You know what? He'll put a good quality staff together. It's a time where you can honor some guys that have been good to you in your career and give them an opportunity to go into a short-term event that's not really a ton of work, but it would certainly be a ton of satisfaction and a lot of fun. And, it's not like building a team, but you are building a team in a short-term event. And short-term events are tough because you've got to strategize as to who are going to be key guys in these short-term, high-pressured events.
Speaking of Steve Yzerman, we're getting some great playoff races, once again, courtesy of the Red Wings just hitting a wall. So, I mean, about what you do when you're Derek Lalonde right now, and also, hey, I mean, Steve Yzerman, I think, is still Teflon, obviously, in Detroit, but this is taking a lot longer than Tampa Bay did for him.
Listen, this is tough going. And when you hear that guys are fighting in practice, the tension is starting to mount. So we've had brawls in Detroit and brawls in Vancouver, guys mixing it up because of major frustration and being ticked off and being unhappy with the way situations are. Look, Stevie made a big pitch this summer to bring in a veteran group to solidify his kids. And everybody thought it was going really well. But you know what? If you don't have great goaltending, and you're still young and you bring in veterans, you still need great goaltending. And I'm not sure they're getting good enough goaltending right now. Not bad, but you've got to get great goaltending this year. The fans will not be happy in Detroit if they don't make the playoffs this year. They're expecting it. And that, I remember sitting at the first year saying, okay, who's going to be better? Ottawa, Columbus, Ottawa, Buffalo, or Detroit? Who was going to be the best team of that group that would take a step? Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's scary how all of them may miss. None of them have taken a step that we thought they would take. Detroit, I guess, is the closest right now. That's hard to believe.
It is. What's funny is, I heard Patrick Kane interviewed after there's the practice fight, and he was like, I think we'd be more disappointed if guys were walking around here smiling and happy. They're happy about this animosity. Have you had cases where you've had guys on your team that are fighting, you're trying to keep apart? Like, I'm trying to get a vibe for you if you see it as a positive for a team as Kane did.
Well, you know what? I'll never forget in Detroit, we had Primo and Probert go in practice, and Primo was
that's
a kid.
real one.
That's a real one. That was a real one. And but no, Guy, I'll never forget. You guys may not remember this name, but I'll never forget my first year in the NHL in St. Louis in 1987. We were going through a tough time, and Brian Sutter was our captain. Brian Sutter, who was a competitive, tough guy, and you remember him, Gordy, how good this was a 30-goal scorer, 180-pounder who would just, tough as nails. He and Jimmy Pavis went toe-to-toe in practice, and I'm thinking, I'm trying to get in between and break them up, and I'm thinking, I don't think I'm going to get in between these two and break them up. I'm going to let them tire themselves out like the linesmen do. But it just, people get ticked off and people are feeling pressure. I don't think it's a bad thing. But that was our captain, Brian Sutter, fighting our number 5 defenseman, Jimmy Pavis, in a practice fight. So, look, tensions run high. I never had it as a coach in Florida, a fight in practice. We had Paul Laws, who had 50 fights for us in the regular season. So, that was enough watching him. But tensions are these look, it's really hard when I watch Buffalo and Ottawa and these teams that are out of it in Columbus. It's so hard on the head. Like how much punishment can fans take with what's going on right now? I mean, I sent Bruce Garriock a note last night after Ottawa beat Columbus. I said, is it true that I got blamed for the loss that I got blamed last night, or was Mel Bridgman blamed for the loss last night by Ottawa?
So a team that I just assume is going to be there, and along with Carolina, Colorado, number one, stole the trade deadline spotlight. The Vegas Golden Knights lose to Calgary last night. They're only a few points. I feel comfortable they're going to be there, but I'm kind of wondering, Doug, they're basically healthy except for Mark Stone now and Martinez. What's your take on a very pedestrian play by that team?
Well, I thought it was, obviously they stole the trade deadline. Carolina did a great job. They did a great, half a dozen teams did really nice work. Them in particular, the hurdle thing blew me away. That shows you a GM that is really doing his homework and taking a deep dive into a guy that's injured with 7 years left or whatever on his contract and making that move. But I'll tell you one thing that's bothered me about them lately is I don't like their goaltending. And their goaltending come up really big last year in the playoffs, guys. A couple of guys, the big guy, they're 6'6" guy, and we talked about it on the show a few weeks ago. The pucks are going through this guy like crazy. Thompson and Aiden Hill, is it?
Yeah.
Really, pucks are going through this guy, and he's a 6'6" goaltender. Just block it. That's what he did last year. But that goaltending situation will be very interesting to watch because these first round battles are going to be unbelievable.
So they are having the GM meetings in Florida. I am fascinated by the GM meetings and how these things, I guess there's some presentations. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about what is presented at these, but they're going to talk about the LTIR situation. Do you think they need to close this loophole?
You know what I've seen, guys, with the commentary lately? Look, it bothered me a couple of years ago when the Kucherov situation where, he starts to skate near the end of the season and he's back and they're
he's skated for like 2 months, Doug.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. And they win the Stanley Cup with $104 million payroll. So I don't think that was the start of it. There was another one that might have been
Kane
prior
in 2015.
Kane.
Yeah.
That's right. Patrick Kane was the other one. Yeah. So look, it's going on. It's a loophole. And Kenny Holland, how do you have it in the playoffs, guys? How do you have a salary cap in the playoffs if all of a sudden bodies start to fall? So I don't know what they're going to do. I've seen the commentary about if they've got to play the last game of the season, to be eligible in this. But I don't know how they're going to get around it. And then they can't do anything till they go to a collective bargaining agreement. And I guarantee you, Marty has got to make a stand here because there has been no PA, in my opinion, for the last 7-8 years. Mm-hmm. Has the PA, do they still have an office before Marty came in? Because nothing has been done out of that office that I've seen. It's been a joke, okay, in my opinion. My humble opinion, it's been a joke. So Marty has got to take a stand here. Am I wrong in that, Gord?
Oh, well, it's funny because Don Fehr was such a big figure in baseball, and you're right. He just was very vanilla, and people seem to think the office is shut down between collective bargaining agreement negotiations. So certainly Marty is keen up there and wants to be on the cutting edge of everything if he can.
I thought he was a shareholder in Backroads, that holiday excursion thing that we're all over the world on these hiking trips, because I never heard of him. So Marty is going to take a stand, and is Marty going to give up things in this? I'm very excited about this negotiation when it happens. And what is it, another year plus?
Sadly,
it'll be interesting.
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know how much time we have left, so I wanted to make sure I added one. Lots. But before, because Doug, one thing seeing you, and I don't want you to critique the trade deadline shows, but it's funny seeing your face. I think of when we did trade deadlines together over the years. I don't know if they changed it, but they would fly in so many people, right? And you'd be there, and you go, "Oh, you're coming up in 10 minutes." Okay, no, sit down. We got Pierre LeBrun in Hartford. Oh, you're whatever. And we go for beers after. 90% of us were pissed off, right? Right? You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to tell the players they're supposed to be team out there, but they would have way too many people. And some of these guys just for the day were at 2 o'clock on. I've only been on once, and that's...
What about the goalie they brought in? And I was on the panel with them all day. They were trying to get rid of me. I knew that when I left trade deadline that day. What was his name?
Ilya Bryzgalov.
Yeah, they put me with Bryzgalov on a panel, and I went out after. And I said, "They're trying to fire. They want me to quit. They're not going to fire me. They want me to quit." They put me with him the whole damn day. What the hell is this?
What's Greg Wyshynski's handle?
Puck Daddy.
Puck Daddy. Remember Puck Daddy and Stellelectricity? So I was on with Wyshynski once, and then Wyshynski let me know Doug wasn't happy about whatever we said, whatever. So anyway, I talked to you about it, but you just said, no, I just, trade deadline day, it's all, like we're waiting for a flight that keeps getting canceled all the time. Like when you're in on it. I think they do it a lot better now that they can cut away to more and more desk in the big studio. But I remember days that started with so much optimism and joy, and then after just people drowning their sorrows about the way it all went.
Yeah, it was priceless. I mean, obviously Kippy was always a star, so we had to always, and then all of a sudden Elliott started to become a little bit of a star. It was a fight for stardom, is what it was. John Shannon, he wanted to be a star. They all wanted to be stars. I just wanted to survive,
So hearing all the NHLPA talk, I actually forgot. It gives me a reason to bring up something we haven't yet on this show. Which is the Corey Perry contract in Chicago. The NHLPA must have got involved there. Not sure if you saw, but they settled on that contract. Any insight onto how that works? Like, they didn't grieve it, but they just decided this whole thing has just gone away now?
Yeah, I don't know how much the PA would have got involved in it, but Gord would agree with me on this, that there's a pit bull in Toronto by the name of Pat Morris, who absolutely loves Corey Perry, and he has since he was 18 or 19. And I can guarantee you that he was on that from day one. And, it seemed to be a little bit of a rush situation when all of a sudden, boom, a contract is terminated. I would say there was some rookie or inexperienced management mistakes made in the way that was handled.
In terms of overly cautious.
Yeah.
Well, my take on
and making the announcement that the contract is terminated. It's not an easy thing to do, and it shouldn't be an easy thing to do.
Right.
So I suspect, the way I know Pat Morris, who, by the way, has gone missing on me. If you see Pat Morris, tell him he owes me a phone call, but
he's with Kate
no
Middleton
big
somewhere.
deal. I've been waiting 6 weeks for the call. Tell him.
Okay, I will. But my take on it, Doug and Justin, is that the collective bargaining agreement is what the rules, right?
Yeah.
And I think Chicago, because all that's happened, they've got a code of conduct within that is maybe the most stringent of all 32 teams. So whatever Corey Perry did or didn't do, or did, violated that, but it didn't contravene the CBA, I don't think. So I bet you, without knowing, he probably got pretty well all his money. And they just kind of, made it nice. Half of it got in a signing bonus anyway, right? Yeah. So I bet you that was it, particularly because, as you say, there's no bite from the PA, and Pat Morris is going to defend his client. So he's in Edmonton. He's in a happier place.
I may write my next book on how the code of conduct doesn't seem to work all the time, because I could write a book on the situations going back to St. Louis, to Detroit, to Columbus. Like, oh my floor!
A scandal book, a tell-all, a bridge burning book. Let's do that one. I'll write it for you.
And I think my literary, how do you say that? Literary agent.
Yeah.
Asked me if I would be interested in doing a second book. Brian, Brian.
Yeah,
of course, Brian.
Yeah. The call lasted like 20 seconds. Like, get lost. See you later.
You've never had a phone call last 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I doubt that. Maybe 20 minutes. That's about the minimum.
So, Doug, what do the GM meetings look like? Like, you guys just in a big old conference hall and someone stands in the middle and says, here's a topic, kick it around. How is it sort of, I'm trying to picture it in my mind.
You know what? It's really, it really is obviously, I don't know how much it's changed. I mean, you always have a great venue, a beautiful resort. It's a great opportunity for the guys to get away from their teams. It's a great opportunity to get together with fellow GMs. And you always see 3 and 4, 5, 6 guys hanging out, talking. It's great that way, but it's I think Coley Campbell and the guys and Mike Murphy, when they were involved, do a great job of setting it up, because there's all kinds of rules in situations, controversial things where they want to hear, have small group presentations, small group situations where you go off and try to come up. I remember when we were doing this, the 3-on-3 and the shootout and all those type of things. GMs are heavily involved, and there was great discussions with 4 and 5 guys in these short panels, as well as when we're making the rule changes. It was unbelievable for me to sit in there when they were taking the banging of the stick touching the body, stick touching the hands, and to listen to Bob Gainey talk about that as a former star checker, one of the great defensive players of the game, to hear Bobby Clark talk about those situations when we're making these rule changes. So really, it was a well-organized, well-structured meeting as far as the GM's meetings. And it was a great learning experience, to be quite honest.
I think it's kind of like more the American style, that they're the Congress, and then the president, the governors are the Senate. Yeah. And Gary Bettman is the president. So it's kind of like.
No. What it is, they're like the House of Commons in Canada.
Okay.
And the governors are like the Senate, who do nothing.
This is in Canada we're talking about. Yes, the States. Okay.
It's like a retirement job. Yeah, that's what it's similar.
There you go. Well, Doug, how is your retirement job going as being a professor?
Where's he a professor?
I've kind of I enjoyed it. Like, last night was scouting. The scouting process was the title last week. The week before was the role of the GM. The week before that was the collective bargaining agreement. Next week it's analytics. I'm enjoying it. I do it an hour every Wednesday night. Some great questions from the students. I've really kind of enjoyed it. I really do. The problem I have is it's at 8:00 at night and 8 to 9. It's tough to get up and play pickleball and golf. I have a 7 a.m. tea time twice a week, so it affects my sleep habits.
Well, listen, we appreciate you coming on, even with no Kip, and we'll see if he can get you in on the Mercedes deal this time around.
Gord, it's such a great thing to see you, Gord, because we always have so many laughs. So it's great to see you, and I don't get a chance to listen to your show, and I couldn't go on twice this week. Once because of pickleball lessons and once because of golf. So tell your guy to please keep in touch
I
so
will.
I can, because I feel terrible about it. You know?
Well, we love having you on, just like here. So anyway, always great catching up. We go way back, so it's always fun. That's for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mac. Appreciate it. That is Doug MacLean, former NHL president, GM, head coach, author, teacher.
Do you know what would never happen now is just in general about, the assistant coaches don't talk, right? Publicly. I don't know when all that came, but
Isn't that only like a Lou thing and then the Leafs still do it? Like,
I don't know.
everywhere, yeah.
I don't see it happen anywhere, I don't think.
Well, you can't get an assistant coach on for media, right? Which he used to be able to. And I can remember the media talked about Doug MacLean was, really unknown. He was an assistant coach in St. Louis, and Jacques Martin brought him there, and he'd been in New Brunswick. So he landed an NHL job like that. So they kidded that. I remember all the media talked about where they were chatting with the Blues, and then this assistant coach, Doug MacLean, goes, "No, we're not done yet. Come on, ask us some more questions," right? Now imagine nowadays that being something we talk about or in the paper. And obviously that worked out well for Doug because he had a great career in the management side, the coaching side, but also he showed right then why he's so successful in the media side from the word go.
It is fascinating that, I guess the fear with letting assistant coaches speak is that you present a ununified message. It's definitely not a word, ununified, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's such a shame because we lose a lot of great insights and personalities.
And there's so many hilarious hockey guys that have such
and they're
excellent.
mostly assistant coaches because you want guys like that on the ice to keep it light. And
The assistant coach thing that I think of recently was that Steve Ott clip where he was behind the bench and his kid was up on the jumbotron taking off his shirt and he's trying not to laugh. I love that.
We got to get Paul MacLean on. Speaking of, he's
so
wonderful.
He mentioned Brian Sutter in that practice fight. Whenever he brings up a name, I'm familiar with him, but I didn't know what his career looked like. I was bringing the hockey DB. They don't make him like this anymore. In 82-83, in 79 games, he had 46 goals, 30 assists, and 254 penalty minutes.
And didn't Doug say he's like 180 pounds or something?
They just said there's just not that hockey player anymore. That does not exist.
Well, he set the template for 5 other Sutters to make it, right? I mean, basically, and it's funny. I remember being in St. Louis for a morning skate once, and in Toronto, like under battle to that, the kids weren't welcome around. Okay, so kids weren't there and that, but it was kind of casual, and some of the players' kids were on the ice, St. Louis Blues, and I remember Sutter was on. His kid was maybe 6, I don't know, small, and mostly it's just a fun thing. Man, he was on his kid's ass. Like, he was just, they were out there first, and he was not like a pleasure skating. Okay, this was not the deal for his kid being out there. And I lose track of which kids made the NHL of all the Sutters because a few of them did. So I don't know.
There's a lot of Sutters.
Yeah, but
2 of them played with my dad online. Brent and Dwayne.
Right,
that's right. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Sutter ties. Do you want to do game time?
Well, take the break. We'll do it after.
Okay. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we'll do some game time, and we'll take some text. Text 590, and we will talk text. Thank you to Doug MacLean, and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real Kyper and Bourne. It is time for some very fun stuff in a moment, which includes text. But first, we want to have a quick chat about one thing. The Sabres are not dead, guys.
Hey, let's do game time first.
Game time first?
Yes.
All right, game time first.
We'll do game time first. All right, it's game time presented by Bet365. Visit the app, latest odds, and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus, Ontario only. Please play responsibly. Only 2 games tonight. And I wouldn't say either of them are barn burners. The Winnipeg Jets are home to the Anaheim Ducks. The Winnipeg Jets are minus 450, so not a ton of value on them there. And the other one is the LA Kings. Like I said, they're minus 280 against the Chicago Blackhawks. So not a ton of value to be found in either of those games. But the thing that has made my heart warm is that Connor Bedard has started to, after that injury, he's come back. He's put the bubble on. And he started to look like a rookie of the year caliber guy. I love a Connor Bedard goal tonight. Give me a Connor Bedard goal at plus 180. And if you want to get really frisky, give him the first goal of the game at 10-1.
No 18-year-old has ever had 3 points in a game, 3 games in a row. And he has 5 points, 3 points in the last 2 games. So got a chance to do it tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, there's been some really good 18-year-olds in the league. I mean, that surprises me.
And he's also above a point per game now, which is an unbelievable feat on a team that is terrible.
They are a really bad team. So he seems to find some chemistry with that Kurashev. So Gordo, I just wanted to ask you this. Who do you think would be, I know you're not a gambling guy, but who do you think is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup? According to the books.
I'm trying to guess what you're going to give me the answers.
I'll give you the answer.
The fact they picked the Carolina Hurricanes is not the answer, correct?
No.
Florida Panthers.
They are not the favorite. They're the second favorite.
You didn't let me finish. I was going to say they're the second favorite. and the first favorite are, in the West?
Edmonton?
It's Edmonton.
Oh, wow.
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised by that too. They are plus 550 to win the Stanley Cup, and the next closest is the Florida Panthers at 7-1. So they're jumping on it that it's a Canadian team, it's public money, they want more money on it. But 5.5 to 1 is surprising.
I'm going to say a thing here where I need Vancouver fans to plug their ears because we've done this recently. But just saying, the Oilers have 3 fewer games played than Vancouver.
Okay.
If they were to win 2 of them, they would be 5 points back with 15 games to go. If they were to win all 3, they would be 3 points back with 15 games to go. Are we sure the Pacific Division's a wrap?
Great question, and I am not sure. I think the Oilers are, another excellent take by me. I think they're an extremely good team, and they've just really gotten build towards the right part of the year.
So I'm just saying it's not out of the question. It's very unlikely. Vancouver probably wins it going away, but I'm not saying the Oilers are done yet.
And the Toronto Maple Leafs are 15-1 to win the Cup there. There's Gordo, they're way down. A lot of teams in front of them. So probably the right spot.
Wait, sorry, their odds are better than they would have been a month ago, I assume.
Yeah, no, they've always been in that range because it's still the Leafs and they want the big public the teams to be getting the money on them. But yeah, they're 15-1. So, but I mean, if the Leafs are to win the Cup, I mean, they're going to have to fold Vegas because
there's going to be a lot of money on that. Yeah.
That was Game Time presented by Bet365. Visit the app for latest odds. Find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 plus. Ontario only. Please play responsibly.
Playoff runs, playoff odds, playoff pushes, the Buffalo Sabres, which I mentioned when we came out of the break.
I should have looked at the odds for them to make the playoffs. Keep continuing.
Yeah, so
I think it's 9%, 8 or 9%, right?
Yeah. I actually wrote on that the other day. It's about the window they were in. Right now, they're 3 points behind the New York Islanders. Just 3 points. Now, the Isles have 2 more games played, but the Sabres are kind of making a push. They're a positive goal differential team. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen is the best goalie in the NHL since January 1st of 2024.
To me, this isn't, because I think we talked about this earlier in the week, in fact, where I was not going to get excited about the Sabres until, because every year they seem like them and the Sens, everybody kind of says that this is their year to take the step. Yeah. And they've said that for a few years. And Detroit. And I don't want to have those combos really. But to me, they really do look excellent. And I love that Byram trade for them. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like they have great goaltending. They seem like a team that's just having some fun. And they don't really have a lot of expectations on them now. Like, out of all those teams that are down there, why not them?
But it's all been facilitated by Detroit just hitting a wall.
Yes.
That's that whole race happened.
It's not teams making a push.
So last year, there was a 2-week period where Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit all spent at least one day in the playoffs. Really? All of them did at one point. For Detroit, it ended when, remember, they had 2 consecutive road games in Ottawa. One was a makeup because of and they lost them both, knocked them out. And then the team that got into the end were the Florida Panthers. Mm-hmm. But all those 3 were there for a day. And is Detroit going to see history repeat itself that they were there for many days?
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Now, they play Buffalo tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That is a 4-pointer. And, boy, I'd like to see the bets on that one. But that is a playoff-type game in Detroit tomorrow, the Buffalo Sabres. And then the Washington Capitals are 1 point out.
I know.
They're 1 point out. And Philadelphia, we kicked off the show talking about, for the first time this year, to me, looks a little vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that with respect because they never were supposed to make the playoffs. But every time they slid, they seem to stop it and then get entrenched again. But I wonder if this time they really are vulnerable or not.
Dude, Philly is, they're 4 points up on, the teams that are on the cusp of the East playoffs. And they've got the most games played. Like, Philly's in jeopardy here. So there are playoff spots available. And I'm just going to say it. Pittsburgh and New Jersey, their seasons aren't over is all I'm saying. They're not over. They have 17 games left, and they're respectively 5 and 4 points out of a playoff spot. So it's a lot of teams that's the problem, but they're right there.
Those two are like when a relationship hits a wall or guests that stay too long. Okay,
Yeah.
they're hanging around too long.
Yeah.
Like you stayed in a relationship that you hung around too long in, or your guest that you wish they went home 5 days ago.
Yeah.
That's the Devils and the Pittsburgh Penguins right now. They lose or something. Oh, they're done. Well, no, they're not done.
Yeah.
It's going to be formidable. But if you get a Nashville Predator type run, you could be there.
It's right there. It's hilarious, actually. The Red Wings +3 goal differential, Sabres +2, and in between them is the Capitals -31. So good for them for hanging in there. So I said we'd get the text today.
-31.
I know, they're terrible. And I get yelled at by Capitals fans all the time. Not a
Okay.
great team.
Got a million
Yeah,
texts.
let's do
So
some
I'm just
texts.
trying to
15 minutes.
I'm trying to pour through them here. This is one that's interesting because we never really do ref talk on this show. But I want to get
I would
both
say you spend a lot of time saying we don't do it.
We
but
don't.
We do some.
rarely.
Okay.
We rarely, I feel like a lot of, anyways. How can we get the NHL to address the error issues and the non-call issues with officiating? It just seems that the rules are being applied differently to some teams. And I'm sure that's a Leaf fan texting in that thinks the league's against the Leafs. But do you guys feel like the officiating is really bad in the NHL?
Go ahead.
I don't. I think it's a hard sport. Go ahead, Gord.
Best officials in the world? I absolutely don't. And the fact that there's conspiracy theories alluding like they're favoring one team over the other. I like the idea of the NBA now gives a report out. Like they'll go over what the last part of the game and they'll be candid and honest, break it down. I still don't know why you can't have a pool reporter say talk to Wes McCauley after he threw John Tortorella out. Now maybe the officials wouldn't like it, but I think it would give them a chance to give an explanation. So after the game, when everything's cooled down, something to say if there is a question, and just to get that's maybe would help it with the public a little bit as well to humanize the officials a bit.
And I actually think in terms of getting that statement from the officials, instead of putting them on the spot, allowing them to prepare a statement on it to say after the game, the pool could come up with 3 questions. You submit it to them or something and say, hey, we'd just like to get a response from these. And sure, it could be oral, but they should be able to see the questions they're going to be asked. So it's not like you're, get them in a gotcha moment or something like that. So they can at least help us understand what the thinking was in many of these cases. I think that as expansion happens, it's going to get harder. There's more games to officiate. There's more officials needed. It's going to water it down a little bit some nights, and that is part of the problem.
Yeah, and once the playoffs start, then they get the quote-unquote best guys, and
so
they'll assign Wes McCauley to the Leafs, and then we'll get to talk about it for 7 years.
I've talked about it before because Doug MacLean alluded to Bob Clark talking in general managers meetings, and I just remember, and I'm talking over 30 years ago, being in a general managers meeting, and that subject came up again about officiating. Yeah. And guys were kicking around, and Bobby Clark got up with a few expletives and said, we're on these guys' asses all the time. How the hell do they know how the hell do they know what we want? We keep changing our minds. He said, look, the right teams win the Stanley Cup and the buildings are full, okay? Leave it at that.
That's really good.
And it was just a good cut. So here we are 30 plus years later, the same kind of dialogue being out there. That's Bobby Clark.
I will say, there's no doubt that, so the Leafs have historically in the Matthews era, they don't take many penalties because they're not a dirty team. These are not physical guys. And in turn, they don't draw a lot. Officials tend to say, we gave 3 to these guys. We got to give a couple to these guys. The Leafs don't take a lot, so they don't get a lot of calls. So they're always at the bottom. It's a lot of 5-on-5. I think people just see calls missed and get frustrated because the Leafs don't. I don't know. They're not in games where penalties are called.
Gord, Armstrong, Keon, Sittler, Clark, Gilmore, Sundin. Who is the best Leafs captain and why?
Okay, so first of all, there's positives about all of them. And I saw Daryl said there today at the Easter Seal Skate. He's going to be honored this year at the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Conn Smythe Dinner.
Nice.
So he was a captain during a difficult era. I think he would be the guy beyond George Armstrong. Doing the book on the 1967 team, and back then being a captain was a lot more difficult because you were, there wasn't the relationship with management and that stuff. And they talk about the kind of understated, quiet leader that he was, and it was huge. And it's hard to compare different eras, Justin and Sam. It's a little bit unfair, but I'll stick with this one. And I don't think Daryl or anybody else would take issue with that. About even though it was a long time ago, for a team that won 4 Stanley Cups in 7 years under a guy named Punch Imlach, who treated me very well, by the way, second time around. But it was he balanced it really, really well, and he was a guy that was incredibly respected, George Armstrong.
Okay, there we go.
It is fascinating to see eventually how Tavares falls in these conversations because he is a consummate professional.
Yeah.
He treats everyone, kindness and respect by all accounts. He works hard. He does all those things. But, there's always issues where they haven't won, so people get frustrated. He makes a lot of money. That bugs people. It's not Austin Matthews who's the face of the franchise.
Is he the best leader? Don't know. It's not a knock because
That's
leadership
a great
group.
question. No idea.
Like off the top of my head, I would look at Morgan Riley. I'm not quibbling about it. I'm just saying, but just part of it. I certainly respect all those things. But what makes the best? And again, it's a different kind of leader than George Armstrong's day or Darryl Sittler's day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're not William Wallace leading the troops into battle or anything.
No, you're going and talking to the media guys every day, saying the same thing over and over. It's
You're
a
right.
different
That's
kind
what
of
it's
leader.
become a big thing. You're 100% right. It's funny.
You're like a PR guy?
Well, yeah, and I remember Dion Phaneuf wore the C with pride, but because he was with a losing team, and I really liked him, I got tired of him droning on all the time on Leafs Nation postgame. And it wasn't his fault.
No.
It's just that he had to be the guy.
In between what he would say. He would.
Matt Sundin got to talk when he win. He got to go, as I said. Right? He'd always do that. As I said, whatever.
It's like,
so
wait,
he
he
got
didn't
to be
say
fun talk.
Here's a great text. Pretty simple. Why didn't you talk about Brayden Point yet?
Brayden Point, 6 points for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nick Kypreos texting Sam and I about how wonderful Brayden Point is.
Yeah, he was at that game last night. The one goal he scored was just the edge work on that.
Special player.
I think that's why the top end of that team, they still sneak into a playoff series. And Brayden Point and Kucherov and those guys are playing 25 minutes a night. You're like, well, they could probably beat anybody. You know, it's just they're still, to me, and they really did a number to the Rangers last night.
Well, they're it's funny because the show I'm on NHL Network Radio, we get those kind of complaints all the time. Hey, you never talk about whatever. Why? But Tampa Bay. But it's funny. This has been a different year for them. They've been scratching, clawing, and scuffling. And they're nowhere near as good a team as they were, but their elite players are elite players.
Yes.
And they're carrying them.
Oh, no, we talked about a scrappy team that just gets in and has talent. It's them.
Yeah.
They're going to win.
Well, I wouldn't want to play them. I don't want, but I mean, like before, where there was a lot more balance and depth, whatever. They can't get Goodrow and Coleman and those guys at the deadline and Hagel at the deadline anymore. But when they're elite players, and he is one of them, when they're going, they're going. And
scary.
So it's weird. They're not comfortably in, but I just feel they're comfortably in.
Yeah, it's
just
like
because
Vegas.
they're Tampa Bay.
Yeah, they're fine.
So the difference with them is the goaltending, right? Where Vasilevsky has not been himself since he's come back.
Yeah.
But like, if there's one guy that is going to flip the switch when the playoff starts, you'd think it's him. I mean, last year he wasn't very good. He was dealing with the injury. That was probably the main reason the Leafs got past the first round last year. And maybe, I don't know. I would want to play them the first round.
Can I give you a weird Brayden Point quirk?
Yeah.
Okay, top 30 scorers in the NHL this season. 27 of them are plus hockey players. You're looking at plus 27 McKinnon, plus 31 McDavid, Matthews, plus 23. So the two that aren't, Jesper Bratt and William Nylander are -1 among players that have the plus minus. And the other guy is Brayden Point, who's -14.
Wow.
14.
He's in the top 30 in scoring. He's 17th with 73 points, and he's -14.
A lot of power play points, I guess. And what's his name? Stamkos is he is way up there on the Masters leaderboard.
He's a big dash, too.
Oh, yeah. I think he's like -20 something. Like, he's really way up there. So
I don't know if it means anything, but
no.
weird
Is
quirk.
that person texted back, said, enough about Brayden Point?
No.
Yeah, just talk about the 6 points last night. Don't pull up that crap.
Fashion question. Looking at Rocky Thompson's outfit last night has me thinking, how far are we away from seeing coaches dressed more like JB and Sam and less like Gordo? #Casual Friday.
So I believe Rocky Thompson was wearing a bolo tie last night.
But it was underneath like a starter jacket kind of thing. It was a weird look.
It's a hell of a combo.
But guess what? I ain't telling Rocky it looks bad to his face. So
No.
keep it up. Whatever you want to do, Rocky.
So I hope it never changes. I look at NBA coaches wearing like the quarter zip and whatever, and I don't know. I'm a little bit of a stickler for this stuff. Like I feel the same way about like at golf courses. People going collarless now. It's like I just think there are some places it's nice to look nice.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't one
What
necessarily.
do you mean, like on national television?
And the NFL guys, you couldn't be Tom Landry anymore because you've got to wear a product. You've got to wear an NFL product.
Yeah.
It's got to be
Do they
part
actually?
of. I believe
like
it is.
Belichick wearing the sleeveless NFL
Yeah, but I
products.
think it's got
wild.
a ink-stained New England logo.
Yeah.
I think they're supposed to wear something there.
But I agree with you, Borny. I love the fact that the NHL guys still wear, but Torts doesn't do it.
Yeah,
Torts
wears
wears like
making a push, isn't he?
He wears just like a Philly jacket, and sometimes he'll have like a tie underneath or whatever. But most of them wear a suit, which I still appreciate.
I'll do a grump thing too. I also think that when guys show up to the rink with no tie, I don't like it.
Always one of Grapes' big things. Whenever they'd walk in, he'd be like, "Look at this beautiful boy wearing the suit."
Beautiful.
Well, Lou Lamoriello felt that those little things are about mandating a tie and jacket were. When you went there, you understood the importance of playing on an NHL team.
Yeah.
Like you felt it was just a little subtle thing, but you understood, because later on you can dress casual when you own your company and you spend your money.
Right.
So it's funny, little things, people do disagree.
And, like in PGA Tour, like for golfers, they often have like a swing trigger or a pre-shot routine. It's like, okay, this gets you in the mindset.
Yeah.
To me, that like, you have a shower, you put your suit on, and you go to work.
Yeah.
I like the idea of not just being like you throw on your wrinkled whatever. And
I will say golf, I've kind of started to, depends where I'm playing. Like if I'm going to play with the boys at Lakeview, I'll go just t-shirt. A t-shirt? Not like a band ripped t-shirt or something, but just like a nice t-shirt. Like
I think the collar, I don't know. But in tennis, they've gotten away from the collar shirt though too.
And it's all going that way, and I guess it's fine. It doesn't make a difference.
Listen,
but
I'm not going to come up to Scarborough and wear no collar.
All right,
but I when you just want to go out and have a few, beverages and just enjoy yourself, you don't have to have a collar on. Let loose a little bit. Does Hyman get 60 goals this season, Gord? Probably not.
So
insane question.
So I
only because it's viable. That's why.
So I think I mentioned to you during the All-Star break, I got to be the host of 2 fan forums, and one was Austin Matthews and Morgan Riley together, followed by Mitch Marner and William Nylander. Anyway, Marner was with Riley, Nylander with Matthews, whatever. Yeah. And it was great, and there was a bunch of people with questions. And before Austin came, like Steve Keogh goes, the PR guy goes, please, if you're going to take questions, please don't let it drag on about how all Austin's being asked is if he's going to score 70 goals.
Oh, yeah.
So I got that out of the way. I just said, look, we're not going to let's talk about other fun stuff. And is it safe to say you're going to try real hard to score every time you get the so everyone kind of had a laugh, and that was that. So I don't get caught up about the numbers. All I know is the first year they played together with the Leafs, Connor Brown scored 20 goals and Zach Hyman scored 10.
Yeah.
In 82 games.
So Connor's going to get 100 next year.
Yes.
This extrapolation.
So I'll say yes because I like the guy. I don't care, and I don't get obsessed about the why. I don't get obsessed about the number.
No. I do want to ask you, is the answer. I want to ask you about today. You were with the Leafs at the Easter Seals skate?
Yeah. It's something they've done every year. I do, and Christine Simpson and I were the host on 2 different rinks, and this is a marquee event always. And you think the Leafs played last night, and they committed to this, and so it's a lot of Easter Seals kids and their parents, and it's also those that have raised a lot of money, to go. So it's a big thrill for them, and it's funny. So half the players are split 50-50 to the 2 rinks. And so the rink, so I'm on microphone on one, Christine Simpson's on the other. And it's just a wonderful, the word magical is overused, but it still is.
Yeah.
It still is. And you know what? These guys are really invested. Like, Morgan Riley knows Casey. Casey's like the top fundraiser. He's a Easter Seals kid who's now an adult. He just kicks ass, man. He's awesome. He's out there. And, so my side, Morgan Riley and Austin, they had them at the bench now. Because there's no point. The other guys skate on the ice, but the lineups get too big for those guys. So the lineups are huge.
You have to pull them off the ice. Yeah.
And I'm having on the microphone trying to, it's like parking lots where they used to have the lights and you're trying to get you in your parking lot. I go, hey, there's Connor Timmins down there, and there's Joe Wall, and there's TJ Brody, and there's Noah Gregor, and hey, they're skating around. If you look, everything be the 2 big lines. But anyway, MLSE and the Toronto, and this isn't blowing smoke. It just is really nice, and they've always committed a firm date. And it really benefits Easter Seals kids. So that's awesome. It was fun to be a part of.
Awesome, Gordo.
You're really nice, and we really appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging with us for a couple hours. It's been wonderful.
Don't we have another hour?
Sorry, pal.
No.
Everyone, listen to Gord's show, and you'll hear him on ours. Thanks again. We appreciate it. Thanks to Doug MacLean and to Mike Futa, and we will be back on Monday. Thank you very much.